Mark of the Mad Movie Mark Movie Review. Thank you for joining me as I review the 1953 film noir, The Big Heat. Oh, sorry, just 1 second. I gotta get this. Hello?
Listen, slob. Stop minding other people's business if you want to stay alive. Some big people are getting annoyed.
Well, we're not gonna let anyone threaten us on this YouTube channel. And I have all of you guys behind me, right? I'm reviewing every movie that has 100% fresh rating Rotten Tomatoes. I'm giving them all a score of 1 to 10. After I watch them and score them all, I will rank them from worst to best. I started in the 1920 silent movie era, and now I'm in 1953 with The Big Heat. This movie has a 100% fresh rating from the critics and a 90% fresh rating from the audience. It stars Glenn Ford as Dave Bannion, Gloria Graham as Debbie Marsh, Jocelyn Brando as Kate Bannion, and this is Marlon Brando's big sister, and Lee Marvin as Vince Stone. So in this movie, Glenn Ford plays a detective who, at the beginning of the movie, he is called to the scene of what they say is a suicide. Now, this is another cop who has shot himself in the head. But in true 1950 fashion, there's no blood, there's no guts, there's no gore. It's just a guy slumped over a desk, and they say that he shot himself in the head. Now, early indications in this investigation show that this is a suicide, and there's no reason to think otherwise. So, calling it a day, Steve Bannion decides to go home, spend some time with his wife. They talk, they have pleasantries with each other, and then he gets a phone call, and the phone call is from the precinct who said there's a woman stepping up named Lucy Chapman, and she says that this wasn't a suicide and that there is reason to believe that this was murder.
Who says Duncan didn't kill himself? I saw the body, Marty. There's no question about it being suicide.
So, of course, Dave Bannion goes to investigate this. Now, when he gets to Lucy Chapman says that this cop who killed himself was actually having an affair, and that she was having an affair with him, and that he was in perfect health. There was no reason to think whatsoever that he would commit suicide. So Dave Bannion goes to the house of the wife of the cop who committed suicide, and he says, hey, I know you gave us your statement, but we have someone else who is saying that your husband was not in ill health and that he was actually having an affair with this woman. So the wife comes clean and says, well, I know Lucy Chapman, I know who you're talking about, and there's like 5 other Lucy Chapmans out there. My husband was not true to me. He did have affairs, but this is a suicide, plain and simple. There's no reason to think that it's not.
She said your husband was in good health and very cheerful, Mrs. Duncan, and that you'd agreed to divorce him.
She's a liar. Tom never wanted a divorce.
So he goes back to the precinct the next day, and he gets this wire that Lucy Chapman has been killed. She's been strangled in her apartment. So clearly something else is going on here. This is throwing a wrench in the gears, and clearly this wasn't a suicide as everyone had thought it was. So as Steve Bannion is investigating this, he gets threatening phone calls to his house, saying that he better stay out of this investigation, that just call it a suicide and get it over with, and don't look further into this. So he decides to go to Mike Lasagna's house. Now, Mike Lasagna is the head of the mob in the city, and he pretty much runs the town. He pretty much, he has quirky cops that work for him. So Bannion decides he's going to try to just nip this in the bud right away and go talk to this mob boss. Now, of course, the mob boss says that he has nothing to do with it, and he doesn't know what Bannion's talking about. And when Bannion goes home, he is spending some time with his child, and now this is going to be a spoiler. This whole thing is spoilers. You know that if you've watched any of my reviews before, it's just full of spoilers. So if this is a movie that you want to watch on your own, you should probably stop watching it right here. But he's playing with his daughter. He's reading his daughter a bedtime story. His wife grabs his car keys. She's going to go run an errand. And then when she steps outside, you hear the engine start in the car, and then the engine blows up.
And oh, they had a terrible time. And our mother came home and she said, oh my, you kittens, you lost your mittens. Stay in bed, darling.
Now, this was a huge shock for me watching this movie. I expected Bannion to get injured or Bannion to get hurt in some way, but I mean, up until this point, the wife was kind of just a side character, and she was in the movie here and there, but I really didn't expect his wife to be killed here at all. And it's, I guess it fuels his hatred. It's his motive now to find out what happened, to avenge his wife, and it really kind of kicks the movie into another gear. It really kind of kicks him into another gear, and now he's not only primed and ready, he's desperate to find out who did this. So Bannion hears that there might be people at this nightclub called The Retreat. So he goes there and he tries to question people to see what's going on. But before he can do that, Lee Marvin, who plays Vince Stone, he's talking to a girl, and they're kind of in this argument, and he goes to like slap the girl around a little, and then Bannion comes in and he pretty much saves the day. He tells the guy to like stop slapping the girl around, and you better get out of here if you know what's good for you. Now Vince Stone leaves because he doesn't want any trouble here, so he leaves. And when he leaves, this impresses Vince Stone's girlfriend, who is Debbie Marsh, and Debbie Marsh decides that she's going to go home with Bannion and kind of talk about what's going on. Now, when she goes back with Bannion, she accidentally mentions his dead wife, and then he gets really upset and he tells her to go away. Now, when she gets back to where Vince is staying, Vince accuses her of colluding with Bannion, accuses her of telling everything that's happened and everything that's been done. Of course, she denies it. She says she didn't say anything, because really she didn't really say anything at all. She didn't really have that much time to say that much. And he gets so upset with her that he just like throws a pot of boiling hot coffee at her, and it completely singes the side of her head, and it dramatically scars the side of her face. So to get even with Stone, after she returns from the hospital, Debbie goes back to Bannion's hotel. Bannion gets her another room to stay in so that they're not staying in the same room. She ends up telling Bannion who was in charge of the car bombing, who did the car bombing, and she also tells Bannion where the guy's staying, where he can find her. So he goes to this guy's apartment, and he knocks this guy around a little, and instead of killing him, he gets the guy to say that he was in charge of the car bombing, that he did do the car bombing, and that he also says that the cop in the beginning who killed himself, his wife is actually, she has incriminating evidence, and she's blackmailing Lagana, who is the mob boss. Bannion doesn't kill Gordon at this time, he lets him go, but Lagana's men end up capturing Gordon and killing Gordon. So then Bannion goes back to the guy, the police officer who killed himself, goes back to his wife and accuses her of betrayal and of protecting Lagana and Stone. Bannion then has his arms around her neck and he's ready to kill her, but he also says that if I kill you, then the evidence that you have, that you're hiding away, that you won't share with anyone, that evidence will get out, and then Lagana and Stone, it'll be revealed what they've done. But before he can, it looks like he's going to kill this woman, but before he can do it, the cops arrive. Who would have thought, right? Magically, the cops arrive and they stop him. Debbie ends up killing the wife of the police officer who shot himself in the beginning.
I'd better call Mr. Stone and have him pick you up. You're not well.
I never felt better in my life.
Bannion ends up tailing Stone back to his hotel. When Stone gets to his hotel, Debbie is waiting for him, and Debbie throws a pot of coffee in his face, and then Stone shoots Debbie. Bannion ends up capturing Stone, and Debbie ends up passing away, dying.
Go on, shoot! Shoot!
And then at the end of the movie, the parties who Lagana and Stone end up getting arrested, and that's the entire movie. So what do I think of this movie? So like most noirs, I will say I'm not really the type of audience for a film noir. I enjoy them. I really love Out of the Past as a film noir because I really like Robert Mitchum. But some noirs like this, I I'm going to be perfectly honest. I watched the movie. I enjoy the movie. I can tell you, like, oh, the girl from It's a Wonderful Life is in this movie, or I can tell you who Bannion is, or that his wife is dead. But there's other characters in this movie that I can never keep straight. I know Lee Marvin because Lee Marvin, I believe, was in The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, which is probably one of my favorite westerns of all time. I mean, it has James Stewart, it has John Wayne, it has Lee Marvin. Fantastic western, and Lee Marvin does a really great job in that movie as the villain. Incredible. And he's in a lot of westerns, and I love Lee Marvin as an actor. I think he's really good. But with film noirs, I usually get the plots for me are a little complex. I need something a little bit more simple than a film noir, and I always lose track of who the characters are and what the characters' motives are and what the characters are doing. And for me, the female characters in this movie, there's so many of them that I had to really go back and watch the clips that I prepared for this, and try to remember like what these women are doing and what their motives are and what they're trying to accomplish. So for me, this movie just has too many characters for me to keep track of, too many main characters that are completely important to the plot line, and the plot line is just so complex at a lot of times that I can't keep track of it. Now that's just me. I know a lot of people are going to roast me for this and say, what? It's not that hard of a plot line to understand, but for me, I watched this movie maybe 3 or 4 days ago. I'm not always able to do a review right after I watch a movie, so I've also had a few days to kind of forget a lot of the stuff. But I will say that the acting is really fantastic in this movie, especially from Glenn Ford and from Gloria Graham. Fantastic. They did a really good job. Now, Gloria Graham, she can be up and down a little bit in this movie, but I think at least at the end of the movie where she gets her revenge, it's fantastic. I thought she did a really good job. And the fact that this is I think it's Oma Fatale, it's different than the femme fatale, because in this movie, in a femme fatale, you have a female actress who kind of gets in the way of what the male actor is doing, finds a way to thwart what he's trying to do. But this movie is completely different in that the male character is actually the one who kind of gets in the way of things. So Glenn Ford, I mean, all the female actors in this movie that he has any type of relationship with, or he has any type of correspondence with, they all end up dying. So that's one reason why this is considered an homme fatale. I believe that's what it's called. So that's a lot different than any movie I've ever seen before. I don't think I've ever seen a movie where there's a male detective and and the women around him, he's pursuing this case even though he doesn't have to. It's just something that he wants to pursue. But after his wife dies, he really does feel like it's something that he has to pursue. But instead of the women getting in the way of what he's doing, he's really getting in the way of everyone else, and he's causing trouble for everyone else. Like, these women would not have died had he not continued to pursue this case. Like, he could have not pursued it, and no one would have said anything. It would have just, the corruption would have kept going on. These women would have been alive. It would have been really no sweat off his back. What does he care? But since he's pushing and he's pushing and he's pushing this case, he's really kind of causing these women a lot of duress, and ends up leading to their demise, which is really much different than any movie I've ever seen before. Also, the scene where the car blows up is really impactful. It's really fantastic in a way that you weren't expecting it. If you weren't into this movie, if you were kind of falling asleep with this movie, that car explosion really wakes you up, because you're like, oh my God, if they're going to kill his wife off screen when we know he has a child, then they're really going to do anything here. Anything could happen. There's also there's a really good scene that I failed to mention later on where he has a bunch of his friends helping him protect his child.
When trouble comes, it'll be from hoodlums who know their business. I'm afraid they won't be stopped by amateurs whose hearts happen to be in the right place.
Do we look like the cast from some maypole dance? I've been places those creeps wouldn't go unless they rode in a 50-ton tank.
And that also is actually a really impactful scene as well, because you really understand the love that they have for him and his family, the love that they have for this child. And if you're concerned at all for the child's well-being, I think after this scene where you see the kind of people, the kind of firepower, the kind of security they have for this child, you realize that the child's going to be okay. Because after the mom died, I'm not worried about Bannion. Like, if Bannion dies, I don't care, whatever, it's fine. But as soon as the mom died, I was like, oh God, if they kill that child, then I don't know if I can even finish this movie or not, to be perfectly honest. But they slowly ease your tension and ease that fear by not killing the child, which I think was a really great idea. Otherwise, it was going to be really hard to watch the rest of this movie. But considering that this movie was directed by Fritz Lang, who did the movie M, I think I really expected a lot more, because M is such a suspenseful movie. It's so tense. It's like gripping, the way that the plot is arranged and the way that they actually corner the villain in M. It's incredible, and I don't think that this movie had that. It didn't have a lot of suspense. Like, as soon as the wife died and I knew the kid would get to be okay, I honestly didn't care about any of the characters, really. Like, okay, if Bannion is able to figure this out and figure out who killed his wife and everything, that's great. But I don't like all the side characters, even Debbie Marsh, who was played by Gloria Graham. Like, I thought she did a good job as an actress, but I didn't really care about her character. And that goes for almost every character in this movie. I didn't really care about them. And Lee Marvin is such a big actor. He's such a great actor. I've seen him in a couple things, and everything I see him in, he's really good. I really didn't think he had enough to do here. He didn't have, wasn't able to put his acting on display. I really wish they could have done a lot more with him. I don't know if this is maybe one of his earlier films. I know that The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance came after this movie, as did The Professionals, The Dirty Dozen. I think he did The Killers also. So those are movies that came after this film, I believe. But I think he's, he plays just kind of the gruff, unhinged type of guy in this movie, which is fine, but I really wish they could have given him a little bit more. And I think that's the problem of having so many characters in one movie and so many actors in one movie, especially if it's a movie that doesn't run that long, is that there's not a lot of room for each character to be fully fleshed out, for each actor to have really enough time to really show what they can do. And I think that's one of the issues with this movie, is that there's so many side characters, and you have Glenn Ford, who plays the main character, and the side characters, including Gloria Graham. I just don't think they have a lot to do here. They have to split their screen time in a way that doesn't give them anything to do. And I just said this. I said this before, but I think seeing what Fritz Lang has done in the past with M and Metropolis, I really expect a lot more from him here. I really expect this to be a fantastic, great movie. I mean, M was in a completely different language. It was fantastic. It was great. But I expect a whole lot. I expect a lot here, and I think maybe that's the issue that I ran into. Is maybe I went to this movie expecting a little too much, just because I love M so much, and because I really think that there's a lot he could have done with the film noir. There's a lot he could have done here. Now, don't get me wrong. The movie has 100% fresh rating Rotten Tomatoes, so it's beloved. It's loved by a lot of people, and there's probably a lot of viewers out there who this is their favorite film noir. They love Glenn Ford, and this is their favorite Glenn Ford movie, and that's fine. That's fantastic. But it just didn't strike me as that. This movie just struck me as kind of it was good. It was a good movie, par for the course. It had a couple really great, shocking scenes in it that made it that really vaulted it a little bit in the final rating. But it wasn't a perfect movie. It wasn't. It was good. It was a good movie. I don't know if I probably will never watch this again. Like, I've visited other film noirs. Like I said, out of the past, I've seen a bunch. And, I probably won't go back and watch this again. But it was a good movie. My first time ever seeing a Glenn Ford movie. And I enjoyed it. It was good for what it was. I'm going to give it an 8.5. Thank you. I hope you have a great day.